welcome to the very first ever EMS Live. So I want to thank those of you who are in the room live for coming to this. It's the first time we've ever done it, and we actually had no idea how this was going to turn out. In terms of how many people would show up live, we had several hundred people register on several hundred people register for the online Zoom, YouTube, Facebook. So for those of you that are watching me on camera, thank you guys for being here. And this is going to be a unique experiment for us to do this live with our guest Elzie, whom I'll introduce in just a minute. But I just want to thank everybody for being here today here in Hendersonville, Tennessee. I want to set this up for those of you that are here live in person. The building that we're in right now is City Square Solar Center, and my company, one of my companies, Energy Lighting Services, has been in this building for about a decade. And we moved into this space, this training room, in I think it was 2018-ish. This looked like something out of The Walking Dead. This room, it was really bad. I mean, it was that bad. And nobody was in here. And I said, I think we could turn this into a training room. And so that's what we did. Our warehouse is on the other side of that employees only door over there. And all of our corporate offices are down the hall. You probably passed them on the way in, saw the signs. But so anyway, that's where we are today. So I use this building and this training room for things like this. So I do a lot of training seminars. My mastermind meets in this room. We have our quarterly workshops, and we do a lot of stuff here. So that's where we're at here in Hendersonville, Tennessee. And for those that are watching on the lives, we're just about 20 minutes from north of downtown Nashville. So it's not that far away. But what is EMS, Entrepreneur Master Series? So I started doing these webinars about a year and a half ago as a way to deliver value to my audience and anybody else who might find me. So what it's designed for as EMS, as Entrepreneur Master Series, is a twice a month live webinar, not normally in person like this one, but a live webinar where I bring on a guest expert and we go deep in his or her area of expertise. The purpose is, like, how do we learn things? Like today, we're talking about podcasting, and we got one of the world's experts on podcasting, how to monetize it. Again, I'll introduce Elzie in just a minute, but that's the idea. So we've had taxes, we've talked about marketing, we've talked about websites, we've talked about insurance. I mean, anything and everything that you need as an entrepreneur, how to build businesses and how to build a life around that is what we do in Entrepreneur Master Series. So that's what that is. Well, as we went into 2023 this year, my team and I were sitting around thinking about how can we step this up another notch. And so the idea of doing EMS live events, that we'll do that. And then we were really ambitious and thought we'd do one every month. And I was like, oh, hold on a second. So as you know, it's May, close to the end of May, and we're doing our first one ever. But we decided to go out of the gate with 3. We're going to do 3 lives this year. Well, as soon as we got those 3 planned, and I started talking to the guest experts that I'm inviting, people were like, I want to do it live. I want to do it live. And I'm like, okay, that's easy for you to say because all you got to do is show up. But we got all this work to do. But so we're actually having 5. We're going to end up having 5 this year. And at the end of our session today, I'll be talking about what the next one's going to be. The next live is coming up in August. I'm going to be talking about the Entrepreneur Master Series in general. But I want you to know, those are watching online, and those of you here and here live, you can register for any and all of these, and you can go to them. The webinars are always free. Although I find it interesting that I had several people register for this and pay money, but they live out of state. I'm like, well, maybe I should be charging for all the webinars. Maybe I'm missing an opportunity to charge for the webinars. To be determined. But as of right now, it's free. You just register for those and show up. And I'll talk about what those are at the very end of our time today. So I'm going to go ahead and sit down and kind of launch into the introduction of our guest and the topic today. So the man sitting to my left, to your right, is Elzie Flenard III. Coolest name in the room. Anybody got an objection to that? Elzie and I met through podcasting, and it's an interesting story. We'll talk more about this in a few minutes. But so I had a guy named Josh Wilson who either invited me on his show or he was on my show. I can't remember. And at the end, Josh, being the consummate introducer, the connector, introduced me to Elzie. Elzie and I started talking, and here we are. And he's the guinea pig for the EMS Live. So he came in from Milwaukee, flew in last night, and he's here today to do this. But he is the founder of a company called Podcast Town, which is on the shirt there. And I'll let him tell the full story of what Podcast Town is and what they do. But if you are interested in learning how to podcast at a high level, whether to launch your own, to manage your own, to do marketing, to do the editing, whatever you need, that's what Podcast Town does. And he left corporate to do this full time. So he's figured out how to monetize podcasting full time. That's what he does. He has a mastermind called Enterprisers Now, right? Enterprisers Club that I'm actually a part of, and part of it's brand new, just started, but it's a mastermind specifically for people that want to learn how to podcast and do it better, do it at a high level. So it's not just for beginners; it's for everybody at every stage and every level of podcasting. And so when he and I met and started talking about doing an entrepreneur master series, I said, well, it would be really cool if you came to Nashville and did a live, because I know there's a lot of people in Nashville that probably want to know, how do you do podcasting? How do you do it at a high level? And so that's why we're here today. So Elzie's a great guy. He's a gentleman. He is very, very smart. He knows his craft. He has a great team of people in Milwaukee that do what he does with Podcast Town. And today he's going to share his 6 pillars of what podcasting is, and specifically this word profit in green above my head there. How do you profit from it? How do you make money? This is going to be very interactive, but he's going to go through in just a moment his 6 pillars and talk about that. I encourage you to write down everything he says about it. We are recording it. There will be a replay sent out to everybody who registered. But once we get done with going through the 6 pillars, we're going to start being more interactive. He and I had a great lunch today, started talking about stuff. He's like, we need to talk about that in front of everybody today. We need to do that in the thing. So there's lots of things, because I'm a podcaster too. I'm on about my 160th episode of my own show. And I've got some stuff and ideas and tips I want to share. I brought some of my equipment. I'm going to share with you. Look, he's going to talk about equipment, but we're going to go over all platforms, equipment, profiting, how to monetize advertisers, networking, anything and everything. So, with all of that being said, I would like you to help me welcome Elzie Flenard to the show. All right, man. So, tell everybody a little bit about your transition out of corporate America into podcasting full time to set the stage, and then we'll go into your 6 pillars.
Yeah, so the long story short, or short story long, I was doing too many things. I was working my day job and the side gigs on the side. And my plan when I was 13, 14, and this is my 13, 14-year-old brain here. It's like, okay, I knew 2 things. I knew I wanted a family, and I knew I wanted to own my own business. So it's like, okay, well, education is important to my mom, so I knew I had to do that. So I knew I had to go to school. So that's what I did. Went to school, got a 2-year degree. I tried to avoid the humanities because I thought it was the time. But I ended up having to go back and get a 4-year degree anyway. And so I said, okay, I'll do the degree. And I started working as an electrical engineer, doing that thing. And I was a music producer. I owned a record label. I owned a minor league basketball team at one point. So I was doing all these things, and I couldn't get anything to work well enough to quit this day job that I hated. And so one day I'm sitting in my basement and I'm staring at my whiteboard, and I'm like, okay, I have two choices here. I could go this route for another 10 years and be in the same place, or I could do something different and try to figure this thing out. And so I said, I need to talk to business people who are running businesses, who know the answers to the test. But I can't just cold email them and say, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Business Person, can I pick your brain? They're not going to answer that call.
Because we all hate that question.
Yeah, yeah. So I said, okay, what can I do to get me where I need to go? So I said, I'll start a podcast. I'll invite them on my show. I'll promote the bejesus out of their business, and I'll learn that way. So that's what I did in my car in June, the middle of June, to Southern Illinois, really hot outside, with my portable Zoom recorder, recorded my first podcast on my lunch break at my day job. And the rest is history. I fell in love with the relational aspect of it. I mean, these people taught me business through this medium, and the plan worked. Here I am. I was able to quit that job and start into podcasting full time.
So, for those of you that have day jobs or have something to keep you busy during the day, uh, this is a testament to the fact that podcasting can lead to monetization. It can lead to you meeting great people, and this is how this all happened. This all happened. You're all here today because of podcasting. Like, I wouldn't be here if I hadn't started this podcast. I wouldn't have met Elzie. We wouldn't be doing this today. And so this is what we're gonna do. Now, I forgot to say for everybody online, if you're on Facebook, on LinkedIn, or on YouTube or Zoom, there's the opportunity for you to go into the chat functionality and just ask questions. We have my intern Justin, who's 21 today. Happy birthday to Justin. Today is his birthday. He's going to be monitoring the chat. So if you have questions at all, just make sure you put them in the chat. It may be a minute before we get to it, but we will get to all your questions. And it's also live. If you got a question, just raise your hand. We'll go through that. So now, why don't we transition the conversation, Elzie, into the 6 pillars? Like, what are the pillars of making a podcast work and how you monetize it?
Before I go into the 6 pillars, though, I have to preface what I'm about to say with this is years of empirical data. Like, I've watched podcasters struggle to monetize for years and years and years and years. We've worked with hundreds and hundreds of shows. So this isn't from a place of I heard somebody else say it, so I put these together and made it my own. This is what I know from data and experience. So um, the first pillar is strategy. Surprise, surprise. You have to understand number one what game you're playing. There are famous people who have podcasts. The game that they're playing is quite different than if you're a business owner and you have a podcast. So the first step is really understanding what game you're playing and what the end goal is. The analogy I like to use, I'm a basketball guy, and I was really rooting for Memphis to go all the way. In fact, if you look at my social, I made a prediction. It was a bold prediction, Jason, that the Bucks and the Grizzlies were going to meet in the finals. Now, we both know that that's not going to happen. But I think part of the reason why is they had a poor strategy. For example, if I know that Ja Morant is a defensive liability, I want him involved in all the action on both ends of the floor. Okay, so who's ever guarding him, put them in a pick and roll situation because I want him to have to make as many decisions as possible on both ends of the floor. So to loop that back to podcasting, what is the end goal? If you want to meet your ideal client, for example, what are the ways that you can make that happen? Is it virtual? Is it in person? Is it remote at their location? So what is your strategy? What's the overall hope and goal of the show? So that's the first pillar. The second pillar is planning. I can't tell you how many people launch the show and they don't know how they're going to upload it. They don't know what uploading it is. They don't know how they're going to get it edited, to produce it, to distribute. They don't know any of that. They just start. It wasn't an argument that we had, but just a slight disagreement when we were talking about the difference in taking that time up front and just getting started because and you're right, getting started is important, but there should be some time spent on the planning aspect. Like how are we going to execute this thing so that we meet our goal? Um, the third pillar is marketing. How are we going to get the word out about this thing? Is it the email list? Is it on social? Is it word of mouth? Are you going to hire an intern to stand outside and put the twisty sign to get people to listen? So really understanding how you're going to market the podcast before you promote it. And that helps with things like, are you going to have segments? If so, how do you structure the show so that it's really easy to repurpose the content later? So all of those things, if you do up front, it becomes easier to do as you get into it. And then the next pillar is sales. Ironically, this is the piece that nobody thinks about until about episode 35. They're like, oh, this is actually a lot of work. I enjoy doing it, but I'm gonna sell this thing. What am I gonna sell? Who am I gonna sell it to? You think about these things before you start, it's really easy to do it down the line. And there's all types of ways to monetize, right? It could be a subscription service. It could be a membership. It could be through a Patreon type deal. It could be ads or sponsors, or it could be guests paying to be on the show. But all of those things happen in that process of that sales and thinking about the customer experience. When they come to the website, what do they see? When they sign up to be a guest, is there a form? How long should the form be? How short should it be? What happens next? Do they get an email? How are they reminded? So all of that journey, that process is that sales. Is what is that experience like when they engage with your brand? because I can tell you for a fact, when you do that well, it makes people want to work with you because they get the impression that number one, you're organized, you follow up, and that you're efficient. So that tells them a lot about you, a lot about your brand without you having to say it. And the next pillar is the content. Now, notice the content came after the first four pillars. So we haven't even started to talk about what we're going to talk about yet until we have all of those things nailed down. So now that we know our strategy, we know our plan, we know how we're going to market it, and how we're going to sell it, now we can start breaking down what the content should look like, what segments we're going to have, what's our message, and what platforms, how we're going to distribute it to our people, how we're going to capture their email address. Do we have a follow up sequence? Those types of things. And then finally, how we're going to manage all of this because there's files, there's audio files, there's video files, there's show notes and audiograms and transcripts and all this stuff, all these assets that we need to manage. And so having a strong foundation on how you're going to manage and execute all those things really gives you a good foundation on your podcast brand.
So is that the sixth pillar is the management? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
All right. So because I wanted to make sure I wrote these all down. Out of curiosity, in the room live, how many of you already have a podcast that you're doing? Oh, wow. Okay, about half the room. So that's good. So anybody been doing it longer than 100 episodes? So just one. Yeah. What's the stat? Like how many episodes people do before they leave, before they quit?
Yeah, it's not very good. It's like seven episodes is what most people get to.
Yeah. Well, I wonder why that is. What do
Well,
you
I
think?
think, like I said before, if people get to about episode 6 or 7 and they realize that this is a lot of work and they don't have a plan, they don't have a strategy, and so they're like, just do something else that's
Yeah.
worth my time.
So we had some really good conversations over lunch about this, but before we get into rehashing some of that stuff, I want to dive into these things, and then also for those of you watching live online, and then anybody in the room, if you have questions, just raise your hand, and we'll address those questions because we want to make this interactive. The purpose of this is you to walk away with actionable stuff that you can take back and start a podcast or better version of your podcast. So, in the strategy, the purpose of the show, the audience. Uh, how do you help people figure that out? Because I know when I started my podcast, I just knew I wanted to do one. And it's probably like everybody. I don't know what I'm going to talk about. I don't know who my audience is going to be. I just want to do one. But I had a coach that I worked with who finally encouraged me to do it after a year of thinking about it. Said, "Okay, let's brainstorm." But how do you, Elzie and Podcast Town, when you sit in with a new, as you call them, resident, because he's the mayor of Podcast Town, and everybody's a citizen, a resident of the town. So when you, as a mayor, sit down with a new resident, how do you do that strategy stuff? How's that work?
The first question I always ask is, what's the goal? And then we work backwards. If you tell me, well, LZ, I want to sell ads, then our strategy has to be different than if you want to build relationship, right? Because if you're going to sell ads, then you need to be doing 5,000, 10,000 downloads per episode for it to even remotely make sense. Right? And so we build the podcast around it. If you say, well, no, really, I want to get clients for my business. Okay, then maybe that's not as important. We want to focus on the experience, the journey. We want to set up metrics, things like that. So number one question is always, what is the end goal? And then we kind of work backwards from there.
What are the answers to that question, generally speaking? You mentioned ads, but what are the goals that people have about their podcast? What's the strategy that you're finding?
A lot of people are, for the lack of a better term, confused about what their strategy should be because they don't understand which game they're playing. So that's usually the first step. It's like, okay, which game are we playing? Are we playing the downloads game or are we playing the relationship game? So once we figure that out, then we kind of drill down and say, okay, well, what types of relationships are you looking to build? Are these people that you want to that are your power partners, that are upstream, downstream, across stream in your supply chain, or are these direct to folks that you want to work with as clients? And then we say, okay, well, where do they hang out? What kind of content? What are they struggling with? What questions might they have? What challenges can you help them with? How do you serve them? And then we build the show from there.
So I'm curious to go around the room and see when you started your podcast. For those of you that raise your hand, what was your goal? Was it I want to make money on ads? I just want to meet cool people. I want to learn something. I mean, anybody want to share just briefly? You don't have to say the whole thing, but what was your goal? So we got somebody who said they just want to connect with cool people.
I wanted to help people go through the same type of transition. Make decisions to guide them.
All right. So we got somebody says they want to connect. Somebody wants to help. So you're going to use that as a helping. What did you say?
Trying to build
Building brand. Okay. I think that's part of what my goal was. I just want to build a brand. So help other people share their stories.
Mhm.
Anybody else? Anybody?
mine is just there's education for financial stuff. Wealthy people have access to it readily, and not everybody has the means to do that. So mine was to bridge that gap and give financial coaching to
Yeah. So you could be an educational podcast. So I think that probably hits all of it. Is anybody else? Anybody else want to goals?
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
I didn't have I literally, Jason, I literally just wanted to meet business people. Like I didn't even consider if people would download or not. I mean, I cared, but literally my only goal was to meet business people and ask them the questions that I was wondering.
Well, I could tell you from my experience as somebody who's done, like I said, I think I'm close to 160, over 150 episodes. I have met some of the coolest people. I have access to people that in no other world would Jason have access to these people. I was having a conversation, I think, with Justin yesterday. We were talking about something, and he was like, "Well, how did you meet that person?" And it was like, boop, boop, boop. It was all podcast related. I'd met this person at this show, did this, and so when I started my podcast, I think I wanted to, as Brian said, I wanted to build a brand, but that brand, I want to make money at it. Like that's the whole point, right? I want to help people and make money, right? I think that's pretty. We're all in the same boat, right? We want to help people and make money. Because if you just want to help people and you don't want to make money, like you're going to run out of ability. If you just want to make money, you're going to help anybody. So you got to do both. And so I wanted to help people make money, and but now what's cool is that I'm actually doing both, and I'm meeting some of the coolest cats out there. I mean, having people on my like you guys. One of the coolest episodes I had recently was you guys know the movie The Secret came out back in the mid 2000s, 2006 or so. Dr. John DeMartini was one of the guys on in there, right? I didn't know him other than through The Secret. I'd had another podcast guest that I'd interviewed who mentioned him, and at the time I'd never heard of him, and I hadn't seen The Secret, and I only just recently watched The Secret. I'm like way behind. I just saw it like a couple of months ago, but anyway, so after I watched The Secret, I said I'm going to reach out to these people who are in this movie and invite them on my podcast. And Dr. John DeMartini, who was in that movie, was like, "Yeah, I'll be on your show." Okay, when is that guy ever going to talk to me? He lives on a ship, like full time. He's lived on a yacht for the last 24 years. Like, when is that guy ever going to talk to me? Because I remember I finally got him on Zoom. I said, "So where are you right now?" And he goes, "Well, I'm south of Cyprus in the Mediterranean Sea on my yacht." I'm like, "Okay, that's cool." And I said, "Well, how do you get mail?" He goes, "I haven't received mail in like 20 years." He goes, "I have an office in Houston. My people open it. If I need to know about it, they tell me." I'm like, and I always send pictures, signed pictures of my guests to them. So for as a memento, I'm like, "Well, where am I going to send your picture?" He goes, "Well, send it to Houston. I'll get it eventually." So like, when's that guy ever going to talk to Jason Duncan? He's never going to talk to me. But now he knows who I am, and we've had an hour-long conversation. Now he might not remember my name, but at some point if he sees my face, "Oh yeah, that's right. We run a show together." So I think the connecting with cool people, getting access to people, building brand, uh, and then also what I'm doing with mine is I wanted to educate people on how to become successful, and I wanted to interview people about how they did it. And I've had several people in this room on my show, and I asked them how you became successful, and it always follows a similar pattern. And so I'm educating people, not on finances specifically like you're doing, Brandon, but I'm educating people on success. So I think all the goals that you guys mentioned can intertwine. But what's interesting, nobody mentioned money. Anybody's lying.
No.
Anybody's like, no, I really want to make money at this thing. I just didn't want to say it out loud.
Yeah, I think that when people start, that's their intention, and that's what I'm saying from the years of doing this is when people start, they're not thinking about the profit part. They're not thinking about the sales or the journey piece. And I think again at around episode 35 ish, they're like, oh, I should probably think about how I'm going to make money from this thing. And that's the rub. It's like, okay, there's a happy medium between the time you spend up front to figuring those things out to just getting started.
Well, I don't. I think when I started, and this is kind of a little insider's baseball and what I did, and anybody else, probably other people doing the same thing. When I started my very first episode, I had a sponsor, but it was my company. It was my lighting company, and I just, in the middle of the show, I was like, "This show is brought to you by Energy Lighting Services. If you need the LED lighting in a building, call." And I said that like, for me, when I started, and I don't know if this was the right thing to do, I just wanted the perception to be that I had a sponsor, whether they paid me or anything. Right? Of course, it's my company, but then I would have a guest on the show. All my guests were business owners, and I would say, "Hey, you want to be the sponsor on the show?" I'm like, "Yeah." I said, "How much does it cost?" I'm like, "Nothing. You just need to write the copy and say, tell me what you want to say."
Mhm.
So I've never produced a show that had a sponsor. Now today, I have two sponsors that actually, I can talk about this later. Maybe if you guys are interested in how I do those sponsorships, they're actually legit. They're not just people that said, "Hey, you want on the show?" But I can talk about that later. But I think from a strategy standpoint, all of the things that all these guys in the room mentioned and anybody online, yeah, I think we all in the back of our mind we want to make money, but I think our lead goal is something different.
Mhm.
The way you,
Yeah, for sure. I think again, really being intentional, I think is the thing that gets you from the helping people to the profit part, right? It's like understanding, okay, in my helping people, how does that fit into the sales journey, the marketing journey? Like I think most business owners start their business to help people, but you still have to make money because you have to eat. I don't know about you, but I like to eat, and I like to have a roof over my head. So with the podcast is very similar. It's like, okay, I want to help people, but how does that value move them into being either a subscriber or membership, or maybe there's a partnership, or maybe you serve as the connector. But thinking about those things intentionally ahead of time is really the difference maker.
any questions from the room about strategy? Because that's the first pillar. Anybody got anything, or if there's anything online, Justin, raise your hand. I know there's a question. Anybody got a strategy question? Anything we talked about on that point?
How well do you have that? You say it's number one, anything else. So how well do you need to, what would you consider a complete strategy? You have some general questions. You template it out. These are the things you can answer in the strategy or in the goal before you
Yeah.
start.
Well, let's for the sake of the people that are watching live, that the audience is not mic'd. So would you repeat that before you answer it?
I believe, and you can correct me if I misstate your question, but basically, how much of that strategy should be fleshed out before you start?
Right.
I believe in the 80% rule. So it doesn't have to be a long, extremely detailed 10-page document. One page with 3 bullet points. Okay, here are the things that I want to accomplish with this show. It could be as simple as that. So it's more important to have one than to have a fully fleshed out 10-page plan, because it really does serve as a guide for everything else that you do.
We were talking at lunch, and that's a great question, Art. We were talking at lunch about that planning, and I was telling us, like, listen, as a business coach, what you need to do is have a fast start for the people that are overwhelmed. Like, I don't want to think about 16 things I got to do. Like, how can I get a podcast started in 30 days? So there are two sides of this, right? There's the let's just get started, because as a coach, I know that starting is half the battle. I work with so many clients that it's just starting. Just got to get started. Just do it. Pay the money. Get in the program. Go. And that'll lead you to the next step. Because if you sit back with an indecision and don't, I don't know, should I do it? Should I not do it? How am I going to do it? like that can work against you. There's power in decision. But what he's saying, and what I agree with, and what we talked about at lunch, is that strategy has to be part of the process at some point. How deep you want to go into it, he says, get 80% done. I would probably err on even less than that as a coach, but not as a podcast coach. Like, he's a podcast coach, I'm a business coach. So if you're looking at me to hire me as a coach, and you're like, I really think I'm going to build my brand, I want to do a podcast. I'm like, all right, let's buy a mic, let's get a camera, let's get you started within the month. Like, let's go. What am I going to talk about? I don't know. We'll figure it out. Like, I want to get you going, because I know once I get you going, the momentum will carry you along. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't have a strategy. You shouldn't sit down. So I think
50 to 80%.
that's good. That's good. All right. So let's talk about planning. So the technical stuff. What could you go a little bit before we talk about that specifically? What is the technical stuff? Are you talking about file names and types, or are there other technical things you're talking about?
I'm talking about all the stuff. If it's going to be a solo show, what camera do you need? If it's going to be a two-person show, is it audio only? Are you going to need two cameras? What system are you going to use? Are you going to use Riverside, Squadcast, all the different things? Having those things laid out before, because again, it goes back to that experience. For example, if I'm going to do a guest show, then what link do I send them? Do I send them a Zoom link? Is it Squadcast? Is it Riverside? So having all that stuff mapped out really makes that process smooth. Or it could be as detailed as, all right, what type of mic do I use? Do I use an ATR 2100, or do I get a Shure SM7? Like, it really just depends on what you're trying to do, who you're talking to, and where you're going to record it. Are you going to record it in your office? Are you going to go to a studio? So planning is just really understanding how you're going to execute the strategy and all the pieces and the technology you need in order to make that happen.
So from a technical standpoint, can we talk a little bit about equipment right now? Is this the appropriate place in the pillars to talk about equipment?
Yes.
So I brought today, just for everybody to kind of see what I use at home. So I use, for a camera, I use just a Logitech, the kind that they're oblong, sits on top. They were 1080p. Everybody's probably has one of those, like 50 or $100. They're not very expensive. But I wanted to go 4K. Personally, that's what I wanted to do. So I moved off Zoom, because Zoom maxes at 720p. Unless you're Garen with Desk Rig, he's got some little deal where he got 1080p. If you want to know how to do 1080p with Zoom, you got to talk to Garen.
And not to interrupt you, Jason, but the other thing with Zoom is the way that the technology works on the back end is they compress the audio.
Oh yeah.
And with a site like Riverside or Squadcast, what they do is called progressive upload. So even if your signal isn't the best, you get a high quality video.
That's really important, and I want to take some time to explain that, because I don't think everybody understands that. But on the camera side, I moved from Zoom to Riverside FM, and I'm not an affiliate with them. I wish they would send me some money, because I tell people about it. But Riverside.fm as opposed to Zoom, because I wanted higher quality video. I really didn't care about the audio, but you're right, it is a higher experience. So I bought this little guy. This is sitting on the camera itself is just this part. So all of this is just a tripod I sit on my desk in front of my between my monitors. I actually shot a video. I just forgot about that. I shot a video of my setup, which we might, Garen, I don't know if we'll be able to do it. If I signal message you the video I shot, it's like a 51-second video of my setup at home. Could you put that on wherever on the TV, or no? Or I'd probably have to do it from my laptop, wouldn't I?
Send it to me.
Because if it's going to go up here for them to see it, what do you think? What's the best way to do that?
Put it up there.
Yeah, I'll do that in just a minute. But let me finish this talk about. So this little guy right here, you can clip it to the top of your monitor. It has it's 4K, and it will shoot vertical. So like if you want to shoot, like for reels or something, this camera will turn on side and do vertical. It tracks. So like I can turn tracking on, and I can walk around the room and it follows me. It's got a deal where you can, if you're doing a whiteboard video, you can put they send you these little stickers that you can put at the corner of your four corners of your whiteboard, and it knows what those stickers are and will stay on the whiteboard. Even if it's tracking, it won't go off the whiteboard. And it has gestures, like if I put up certain number of fingers, I don't use the gestures, but if I did that, it can zoom in, zoom out with me just doing gestures. I think that's weird. So it's like I'm doing, like I don't know, it's weird. Zoom actually turns gestures on. Did you know that?
Yes.
Zoom, like if you do a thumbs up on the camera, it like does a thumbs up emoji in your. Freaks me out. Like I'm like, I didn't do that. I didn't mean to do that. But this little guy's like $400. Do you remember? I don't remember. Gary, do you remember how much these were? It's like $300 or $400. This is definitely worth it. This will make you look like a rock star, even if you suck. Like it's Insta360 Link. Insta360 Link. They make a lot of different cameras, but this is a really good one. It's USB-C, so it plugs right into your USB hub on your computer. So this is a good one. Now, on as far as mics go, you mind grabbing that? This is the Blue Yeti. This is about $129. I think when my wife bought this for me, I think it was $100 at the time. They have newer versions now, but this is it, and it's micro USB, which is ancient technology. I think the newer ones have the better ones, but anyway, so it's got a micro USB, goes straight into your computer. And it has, is it cardioid? What do you call it?
Cardioid.
Cardioid. So it's got a cardioid button that I don't use much, but it has 4 different patterns. So if it's just you, it'll only do it from this side. If it's multiple people, you can turn it and it'll pick up from around the room. If it's, one here and one here, you can turn it. It's pretty cool, So, and I just set it on the desk. My desk isn't set up to where I can do one of those clamps where you pull the mic down. My desk is kind of fancy. It doesn't have the edges on it. So, but this guy's only, like I said, $100. This has a physical mute button on it, which is really nice until you forget you pushed it. Because Bobby, we always make fun of Bobby because when he's on our calls, he's always talking and he hit the mute because he has one of these too. But the physical mute button's nice. If you don't want everybody to know you're muted, you can hit the physical mute button. And nobody knows you're muted on a Zoom call. But this is, like I said, $100 called Blue Yeti. And I was on somebody else's podcast. I don't know if you have any of your clients do this, but they sent me a mic to use. It was the only one I've ever done. I was on their podcast, his podcast, and it was audio only podcast. And they FedExed me a mic, and it was a Shure something. I forgot what it was. And they said, you have to use this mic. I'm okay. So since I had both, like I tested them both, and I couldn't tell the difference. But I'm not an audio, whatever those people are. What are those? Audio, what are those nerds?
Audio engineers.
Nerds. But I'm not that guy. But to me, that mic was a couple $100, $300, $400. This is $100, so I didn't do it. What other? Let's talk about other technical like gear. And I'm sure you guys have questions. What other gear questions should we answer for everybody in the room?
I'll give you the traditional salesperson answer, and it depends. If you're in a private office and you want mobility, then the ATR 2100s are really good. The Yetis work fine for that as well. If you're slightly above that, the Shure makes this MV7 mic, and there's both XLR, which just gives you a higher quality sound, and then they have a USB connection as well. If you're like me, I'm an audio nerd, as somebody said. I like the Shure SM7B. That's the microphone of my dreams. I'll probably have my family bury it with me in my casket. So SM7 7B. Yep. So really, it just depends on the complexity of your setup. If it's a relatively simple setup, the Rodecaster Pro is one of the best boards ever made on the face of this planet for podcasting. But it might be overkill for if you're just doing a solo show. I like it because it grows with you. So no matter if you have 1 person, 2 person, or 4 people, that board will accomplish everything that you need. And they have like really cool, colorful pads that you can program sounds in, Bluetooth connectivity. So all the features that you need are right in that board. So that's my go-to. And I mean, I could go on and on and on with other equipment, but those are the 2 that I really standardize around.
Anybody have questions, technical questions? And if you're online, if you got technical questions about mics or anything like that, this would be a good time to ask that question. And once we go through these, I'm going to show you my setup. Anybody have questions?
So I do audio, video, and I've been using a lot of just Apple products and then using the Switcher Studio. which is pretty cool because you can switch cameras. I'm looking to like do something more. So there's a soundboard that will auto transition cameras based on what mic is picking up. But with 2 people and 3 cameras, like that could be confusing. Is there a way? What's the best? Like I was looking at Mevo maybe, but like what's the best setup that you might recommend to capture multi angles if I don't have like a studio engineer to be my board manager?
So try to repeat that. I know that's a lot, but just for the people online, I want to make sure that's a good question.
Man, that's putting me on the spot. So what
I
the
will
question
do it. Would you
is,
like me to-
if I'm looking to do a 3-person setup and I don't want to use a sound engineer or a person switching physically, what's the best platform to use?
Like an upgrade from Switcher Studio right now. And I was looking at Mevo, and there's another camera that has some stuff. I forget which one it was, but it has like an auto switching feature.
Yes.
Based on what camera or what mic is picking this up.
Yes. So I know that Switcher Studio cannot do the latter. Like it can't pick up which microphone, but you can auto switch. I don't know of any platform that picks up the microphone. Riverside has recently added a feature that you might check out that gets closer to that. So I would say, but that'll introduce some challenges in terms of using Switcher and Riverside with multiple angles. Okay. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if for the multi-camera especially, because with Riverside you would basically have to have each person on in Riverside in order for it to know who's speaking. So that might be an option. Just have each person log in as a guest, and then that way you'll get each angle. And you might have to do it in post, like edit it in post. And there's all kind of AI tools that can do that easily. It recognizes who's talking, and it'll cut the video based on who's talking. So I would maybe look at that if you want to standardize around Riverside, just having each person log in as a guest, and then using that AI tool to edit it in post. That way you don't have to do it during the live production, and it'll save you a ton of time. So you won't have to edit it manually.
Good stuff. Any other questions?
So there's some questions that came in
Yeah.
in the chat, and it came in. We started talking about equipment, but it's about strategy. And she also asked a follow-up question about posting a list of equipment after the show for folks who have registered. She asked if you would do that, but she asked, how do you focus in on one strategy or target a specific audience when you have a varied idea for your podcast business? Should it be focused only on one target audience?
Okay, so the question coming in from online, so thank you for submitting the question, is, and I'll pose this to Elzie because he's the expert. So what, if you have multiple ideas or strategies, how do you narrow that down to one strategy for your podcast?
Yeah, I like the question to narrow it down to one strategy. That was the first thing that I was going to say, is have one strategy. I think for me, it's if you put a Venn diagram up and you say, okay, here's how I serve people. Here's how I show up in the world that's different, that differentiates me. And here's how I can make revenue from this. That little sweet spot, that shades in all of them, that's what you want to focus on.
So now I would say to her and to everybody who's asking similar questions, this is where the beauty of having a coach is. I would not have been able to pick the thing I was going to talk about without a coach. I had a coach. I didn't know Elzie at the time, so I hired another coach who helped me get launched and hooked me up with a company who does what Podcast Town does. And that launched me. And once I got into it, then it started settling down. To give you an example, my podcast is called The Root of All Success. And I had 5 keys that I knew based on the interviews I'd had prior to doing the podcast, that these keys unlock success for entrepreneurs. So I talked about their story. That was my angle. And then I tried to flesh out how they use these keys and would talk about those keys actually in the show. I did that through about 30 episodes, 35 episodes, and then realized I don't have to talk about my keys. I can go more into their story and just ask general questions about how did you become successful. So mine shifted, and it was all entrepreneur business. Well, now I'm inviting people like Dr. John D. Martini. I'm inviting marriage coaches. I'm inviting people that's just about success in general and not specifically about business success and how you did it. So I think your strategy is going to change over time, but it is good to narrow it down to that one to begin with.
So one more question that came in. what do you do if you have a substantial following already and want to level up? Set a new goal? Question mark.
Substantial following already, but you want to level up. What do you do with that?
My first question would be, what does level up mean? Does that mean you want more followers? Does that mean you want more downloads? Does that mean you want to monetize? So I would question, what does level up mean in terms of technology? Does that mean a better quality?
Yeah. So you type in there a follow up to that, and we'll circle back to that later. Justin, would you turn the thermostat up a degree? I'm actually cold. I don't know if anybody else is cold. I'm cold. While he's doing that, I want to show this video. This is actually a video I took yesterday of my setup in the house, and I took it no anticipation of showing it today. But then when I got here, I was like, you know what? That's actually going to be good to show. But this is just, I have a small office. It's probably 10 by 12 in my house. That is my desk. It's my workspace. But I'll show the video, and you can see. I'll point out some of the different things in my office. Whoops. Oh, I had sound. I actually edited it, put sound in it. I can't. Where's the remote? Give me that little remote. Because it's kind of boring if you watch it without sound. There we go. So you notice the lights I've got in the corners. I'll talk about those in just a second. All right, so I'm going to stop right here. This light in the middle that's mounted to the ceiling, that changed everything. Because I was using a ring light before. I don't know what you use. Maybe you got some ideas about this. But the ring light, I don't often wear glasses. I only wear glasses maybe once a month. But ring light and glasses don't go together. So I bought this. Man, it makes all the difference in the world of what I look like, the lighting. The bad part about this is that because of the limitations of my office and the space that I have, it should be mounted off center. Like if I'm here, it should be at a 45-degree angle to be best. But if you go back to that chair I had in the corner, I shoot a lot of videos from that chair using that phone tripod there. And so where it's mounted, I can turn it around and do desk or chair. And if I'd have mounted it at 45 degrees, I wouldn't have been able to do that. So that's one trade-off on what I did there. So I'll go ahead and continue showing this. And so I've got two monitors, and in the middle of the monitor is this little camera. So I've got light behind the chair on the wall shining up. It's all multicolor LED. I've got one that you didn't see on this wall, and then you're going to see another one on the floor right there. Oops. Let me go back. There it is. And there are my screens and microphone and cameras in the middle. And I got to plug Think and Grow Rich and my book. Oh, I want to show you this too. This is something. Let's see. That little guy right there. It's blurry. That's a stream deck. You guys know what this is? This little guy right here. I know it's blurry, but Garen at Desk Rig, he's got one back here in the back of the room. This thing is killer because what you could do on this is you can set all those little buttons up to do things automatically during your show. So for instance, if you have a sound effect you want to use, if you want to visual something, you want to open up a website, you want to do some sort of drop-in PDF or visual, all you do is hit a button. You don't have to go searching for it. So that Garen actually turned me on to that. All right, and there's the end. So whatever the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. Napoleon Hill. So anyway, that's kind of my setup. So it's not very big or it's not extravagant. What did you see? It's the first time you've seen that too. Like, what are your thoughts about the setup? Ways I can improve that? What do you think?
I don't have any ways that you can improve it. It looks like it's the key is that it's comfortable, that it's repeatable, that when you go into the space, it gives you that feeling of being creative and ready to have conversations. So that's different for everybody. For me, I really enjoy like the studio feel. So anytime you see me, there's the red and black check, foam on the wall, and that's just for me. That's makes me feel like at home. It's like when I see that, it's like, all right, it's time to go. So the more important thing is just get equipment that, number one, you know how to use. It matters what you get, but it matters more that you know how to use what you get. and that you're creating a space that makes you feel comfortable and ready to have those conversations. So I like it. It's cool.
Question?
How much was that light?
The light?
Mounted to the ceiling, and what's the brand?
I don't remember, but you know what? This is a good idea. So, Justin, I need you to make a note that when we send out the replay on Friday, that we need to come up with a list of equipment. We'll do lights, mics, headphones, and cameras, and I'll rely on what you got, and also note these are mine. But that light I bought online, it was probably $150, and so it's just a box, and then the big bowl is what do they call it? A soft box diffuser. So really the light's only about that big. And I bought that ceiling mount, that hard ceiling mount. I think it was $40 or $50. And what I did is I took the power and I went into my ceiling light, and the ceiling light had a fan switch and a light switch. Had two. So I just went to the fan side because I don't have a fan in there, and I bought a little pigtail, plugged it in, and cut a hole in the light fixture. I was actually pretty proud of myself. I'm not an electrician, but I thought it was kind of cool. So I've got two switches on the wall. One turns the ceiling light, and one turns my light on.
I did that, yeah.
Yeah, but the light, all those lights in my office are on remotes. So everything's on a remote. I don't have to touch any switches, and the remotes, you didn't pay attention, but they're all on my desk, and I just hit a button. And the two lights, the one behind my chair in the corner and the one that was in the other corner, I got those for like $50 or $60, and they are operated with my cell phone. Like I could turn those on right now. I could get on my phone and turn them on. They would turn on at the house, and they're full RGB, do all the different colors. But that light, Mark, made if you go look at my podcast before I put that light up and that one, you can definitely tell the difference. It's worth $150 or whatever it was.
Question.
Yes.
For you, Elzie. In regards to the Shure SM7 with the Rodecaster Pro, I ended up getting and using a Cloud Lifter CL1 activator with mine.
Yep.
Since you love the SM7, was wondering if you had a similar experience.
Yes. And
repeat that question for the people online.
Oh,
very technical. That's very technical.
So if I had to summarize the question is, did I also have gain issues with the SM7B with the Rodecaster Pro 1? Yes. That's the trade-off. The RCP2s though, their onboard amps are fine, and you won't need the Cloud Lifter for that one. But the ones, you'll need a Cloud Lifter. But if you get the two, you won't need it.
Very good. Any other questions about technology?
I'll just say for the light, anyone that has, you mentioned the RGB and that's adjustable, so that you can adjust the temperature, most of those will work, and you can get them from Amazon. I like mine at 5600 because it brings out my good side.
That one, oddly enough, does not adjust the color. It is 4100, and that's it. I can't change it, which I thought was odd because I'm an LED. I do LEDs. These are all LEDs.
Mm-hmm.
That's what my company does, and every light that has the Kelvin temperature changing. That one didn't.
Yeah,
but it's fine. It works. Now it does. I can dim it. Mm-hmm. And I keep it on all the time when I'm working at the desk. I like it, but I keep it at 1%. Just one for my shows. If I turn up to 100, it's like standing in front of the sun. I can't do anything. But it's at 1%. I want to talk about Riverside versus Zoom and you mentioned
Squadcast.
So I don't know that one.
Yeah.
But for those of you who do podcasts online, what do you use? Just out of curiosity, Zoom or something like that?
No, I in person.
Oh, so yours all. So if you're doing it online, what do you use? Zoom.
Riverside's the main, but StreamYard.
Riverside, StreamYard, Zoom. So I think Zoom's where everybody starts, and I think it's perfect for starting out, but it is not where you want to be long term, right?
Correct.
Because of what it does, the audio and the video quality is it maxes at 720, and it's fine live. It doesn't look bad live, but when you put it out on YouTube after the fact, you're like, ooh. Especially when my team. This is a good place to do my talk about my sponsor. But when my team Story does my social media stuff, and they take clips, like when Leon was on my show, if I'd have done it on Zoom and they took a clip of him from Zoom and put it on the vertical, it's fuzzy. It looks bad.
Mhm.
It looks real bad. So this is a good place to plug Story. Story, STORYY. If you are interested in getting your social media clips done perfectly, Story is the one to do it. TheRealJasonDuncan.com/story with 2 Y's. I'm an affiliate with them. They are the chief sponsor of the EMS. What I switched to only because they were the only ones at the time that did 4K. Does anybody else do 4K?
I would have to double check, but I believe Squadcast does as well. I'm not sure if Clean Feed does or not, but those are the main ones that I use: Squadcast, Riverside FM, and then Clean Feed.
Well, you know what's funny about that? I wanted 4K, but after I did like 3 shows in 4K, I quit because the processing time of 4K. If I do 3 shows in a day, the first show is still processing halfway through the second show, and it slows everything down. My computer and my internet just can't keep up. And I'm on gig, whatever, AT&T, whatever it is, but it just can't keep up. So I pushed it back down to 1080p, which is completely fine.
And most people that's what they're watching on, is 1080 anyway.
But tell everybody about why Riverside overzoom with the progressive upload. I didn't realize that, and I think that's really cool. Tell everybody about how that works.
Yeah, so essentially how it works is it uploads locally to their machine as it's recording. So even if they have a poor internet connection, it'll still record in high quality because it's recording progressively as it's happening. So even like sometimes I'll be recording and they look fuzzy, and then Riverside gives you a little message saying, "Don't worry." Basically, the real thing looks a lot better, and that's why, because it's recording as they're doing it.
Yeah, and you'll have to tell your guests that, because they won't understand, because they'll see, hey, you look really fuzzy. Well, it doesn't matter. It's recording the highest possible quality, which with this I could do up to 4K, but I've got it maxed at 1080p. But it might look really fuzzy because of slow internet connection, but it's putting it on the hard drive of the computer, and then eventually pushes up to the cloud.
What it'll do though is even sometimes it'll go black. Like if it's really bad, their side will be blank, but it's still recording their video.
Yeah, I had that happen. I was a guest one time, and my whole thing went completely black. Like I wasn't on the screen anymore, and I'm like, "Hey, what's going on?" He was like, "This is before I knew about Riverside." He goes, "No, it's fine, it's fine." So we had to pause and reset so that he could edit that out. But yeah, Riverside, and I think it's what I pay. I think I pay $40 a month.
Something like that.
Yeah, it's not that expensive,
30,
and it's the entry level. The next level is like $600 a month. They have nothing in between.
Yeah,
but you don't need like 40 works. Brian, you were gonna ask a question?
The challenge I've had with Rivers, and I've been on several podcasts, 4 or 5 that Riverside, and I always have a problem with the mic. My mic apparently comes over like red hot on Riverside. We have this audio problem during the entire episode. I can't figure if it's me. They don't know how to make the Riverside work correctly. But that's the issue I've had, which scares me from using Riverside, because I've never had a positive experience as a guest on somebody's show using it.
Are you using the Yeti?
Yeah.
What is your volume level on your side?
I have, so I'm trying to play with these 2 buttons so that I can hear myself and they can hear me, and then they're always like, "Whoa, turn that thing down." I turn it down and I can't hear me in my head, right? So I've been so challenged with Riverside. I don't know if it's me or them.
Sounds like
when Brian was on my show, that's actually how we met, and that's how he's here today. But yeah, we had that issue there. Riverside, it's probably you, because I've recorded so many people.
See, I didn't want to say that.
Well, I know him. I get it. But it is probably your side something, because I've had hundreds of guests, and that I've never had that happen. But Riverside does have, and I learned it after interviewing you, on my side as the host, there is a slider for the I don't know, I call it hot. What is the word? Like the gain,
volume,
the volume, how hot the mic comes through. I can slide it. So when yours was all the way in the red, I can move that slider down and it maxes at the yellow rather than the red. So I learned that after having you on the show. So that was,
Yeah, you might want to check too where you're monitoring, because you can either monitor from the mic itself or from your computer. If you're in your computer, then you can turn it up, so that might be why you can't hear yourself. Maybe you need to turn yourself up a bit.
do you plug your mic or your headphones into the mic itself? Because this has a headphone. I wouldn't do that. I would go through the computer. That might fix it.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you plug your headphones into the computer instead of the mic, and then just tell your computer that the output is through the Mac or your computer speakers rather than I've never used that as the speaker. I know you can, but I've never used it as that.
Okay.
Good questions. Yes, sir.
2 questions. First, what mic do you make your guests use if you're doing remote so that you have good audio quality?
So
What guidelines do you give them? Like, I have these speaker notes and I send them to them. Sometimes people follow them, sometimes they don't. But I've had episodes where the audio is garbage because of something that they're not using on their side. So what would be the one thing you would say? You must have at least X to be a decent audio on their side.
What would be the minimum audio requirements for guesting? I like the ATR 2100. You can get them for $70. Even if you send it to them as a gift, I require it for my show. And I have in my workflow, it says in bold letters, if you do not meet the technical requirements, we will cancel the interview. And I just keep it as simple as that. Like, I can't understand for the life of me in 2023, as we're sitting here doing this EMS live, why people still get on podcast interviews with their microphone that comes on their laptop. It hurts my heart for everybody that's involved in the audio space, but people still do it. People still do it. I had a guy hop on one of my interviews from the gym, and I'm like, "You're at the gym," and it's like, "Well, let's reschedule for a time where you're not at the gym." So, but the ATRs are, again, they're super cheap, and they're yeah. Those.
By the way, you can clip on your desk still. Like, I can just pull a drawer out and put this. That's what I've done. I just put a little
Well,
seat
that's true.
because my
That's
desk
true.
looks similar to yours. But the first guy said, make sure they at least have wire, right? Like, but then the wire, they're brushing on their collar and stuff. You go, so even that's not.
Yeah, you could send them. They make these. Logitech makes these $30 headsets. Even that's okay. Anything is better than their laptop mic. Yeah. So even if you want to send like
That's the audio tag, ATR,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
what you're
you could even have them send it back and you say, hey,
They want to send it back, great. If not.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Yep, either that or, like I said, send them a $35-$40 headset, and that's better than the laptop mic.
Okay. And then for at home, I have a little studio wall that I set up on my desk to absorb the noise, but it doesn't make me feel very comfortable at home, So I'm trying to see my monitors and I have this thing and I have the camera going. So do you think that's necessary if you have a good mic? And I even have a pop filter. Do you need to have that low foam wall as well or not? From your experience?
It depends on your room. I like to tell people you want to talk into a corner if you can, and even if you get like these. The question was how much audio sound dampening do you need? And it depends. If you're in a large room like this, you might need more. I like basements because there's a lot of stuff in basements. Smaller is better, and if you can get these little like poster boards and put the foam on either side, tuck it in the corner, talk into the corner, then that'll, for most applications, that'll do the trick. Yeah, and it'll cost you $100, if that. Yeah,
One
take a couple hours.
tip that I was at a mastermind event a couple of months ago. One tip the guy gave was that he doesn't use a Blue Yeti, but he uses a stand like I do. It's a stand mic, not on a boom. And he said, if you will just put something, if your mic is on a flat desk with nothing on it, sound is bouncing. So if you had a shirt, like a T-shirt or something, put it on the desk just to absorb a little bit of the sound, and it'll keep it from doing it. What I've discovered with mine is I have mine on the desk, just a flat. It's got a kind of leather top desk, but I have that sitting flat. As long as I'm within 6 inches or so of the mic, I don't have any problems. But if I move beyond that, it echoes. And not bad, but it does a little bit. And that's probably one of the limitations of the Blue Yeti as opposed to some of the mics that he was talking about. But I don't think listening to my shows that there's an audio issue. My guests, I do have guests that have audio issues, but at this point, like, I'm gonna plow through. I've never canceled one like Elzie has for that, but I understand why.
Don't make me sound like that.
No,
You make
no.
me sound like a bad guy.
No, I think it's well, I've had some that I couldn't use. I've recorded like I can't do this, but I started off really strict on mine and said, like, if you don't have an X, Y, or Z, and I had this long list of things, and I realized that nobody was reading it and nobody cared, and people showed up however they're going to show up anyway. So I just quit doing it. I was just like, hey, looking forward to seeing you next week, and then you show up and you just make the best of it. I've only had one. I think there was one time that was so bad I just said, look, we can't, and the guest agreed. He was like, yeah, this is not going to work, and there was a problem. But I had one of the episodes I recorded last week. It was on a laptop, and it was bad. The conversation was awesome, but the sound is just going to be bad. Video is going to look bad. But it's my show. As long as I look great, it's all good. All right, question.
Are you able to stream the show, or are you post editing?
So the question is, are we live streaming or doing edits after the fact? The only thing I live stream are these webinars. I do these twice a month. And Garen at Desk Rig, this is a plug for Desk Rig. Go to look up deskrig.com. He is my producer. He does all the back end work for me, does all the switching. It looks killer. But my podcast is always post edit. I have it edited after the fact, and it usually comes out about a week or a half after I record it.
Because I mean, there's lots of tool plugins to solve the audio issue problems. They're recorded on a laptop. I know Adobe just came out with AI podcast.
Mm-hmm.
It's killer.
Oh, yeah.
Literally sounds like you're in a studio and you'll be flowing on your phone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, I don't know what my editor uses. I have a VA in the Philippines who does my stuff, and I haven't noticed any significant sound issues. So I don't know if she's running it through some of that stuff. But what about you? What do you do with yours?
So we don't do most of our podcasts live, but we're actually launching a show where that's going to be live. And we're doing most of the production live. We use Switcher Studio. So we'll be doing all the angles, the graphics, and all that stuff live. But I know we'll do some posts just because the audio has to sound great. But for the most part, we'll shoot that one live. But my other show, it's on demand. We call it Live to Tape, just because I do so many of them in such rapid succession that it wouldn't make sense to do them live. So I like doing both. Both have different preparation and both different ways that you need to show up. So it's cool to mix it up.
Is there a benefit between one or the other?
I love doing them live. So this is kind of going back to our earlier discussion. We were talking about strategy, right? So for my new show, my number one goal strategy is to get in front of people and to help connect them with each other. So obviously being in person is probably better than not. So for that show, I want people in the room in 3D talking with each other, doing the show that way. Like we're going to do back tosses and games, and we're going to teach people things and all that stuff. So that just works better if it's in person. But all that's because, right, we thought about that before we launched the show. So I think, again, depending on what outcome you want, it would determine which one you use. For Enterprise now, I just want to meet as many people as I possibly can. So I might do 3 of those in a day. And naturally, getting 3 people in person to do anything is difficult. So that's not as feasible. So so for me, I like doing both because it gives different feels and ways that I need to show up and engage.
So we kind of stalled the whole thing on this technical stuff, which is really interesting. But I want to move into a little bit more about the marketing and strategy, because I know strategy is the number one. Is the number one pillar. Marketing is number 3, and then sales is the monetization part is followed at number 5. But I want to talk about what we talked about at lunch about how we've been able to monetize through and the way we get listeners. So a lot of people think that they just want the download numbers. And occasionally I have people say when I invite them on the show, well, how many listeners do you have? And when I say occasionally, out of 160-ish episodes, I think 2 people. And this is a true story.
What'd you tell them? I'm curious.
So this is a true story. The the first person who asked me that, I said, honestly, I don't know. Because at the time I didn't know, and I wasn't paying attention to it for the very reason that you may think I might not want to pay attention to it, because I didn't want to see how little the number was. I just didn't want to know. But the second guy asked, and I wrote back, because it was a podcast booking agency, and I said, I don't answer that question. If he doesn't want on the show, he's going to get on the show. And then he came back and said, I'm really sorry. That was my people. I want to be on your show. Because the people who that I want to talk to don't really care. They just want to have a good conversation, and they want to leverage whatever little audience I might provide for them. That's fine. Because even if it's 1,000 people, that's 1,000 people they didn't get access to, right? If it's 200 people, it's 200 people they didn't have access to. So that's the way I answer. But only 2 people have ever asked. Nobody asked. But everybody seems to think that's the thing. How many people listen to your show? It doesn't matter. If I told you I made $1 million last year because of my show, but only 1,000 people listened to it, now we're talking about a different. I didn't, by the way, but like we're talking about a different conversation here. So what is the difference? Like, how do you manage that? How many downloads, or what I want to sell? How I want to market it? Who I want to talk to? Like, what do you think?
Yeah, I think again it depends on which game you're playing. If I am, I'm a Milwaukee guy, right? So Bobby Portis just launched a podcast. For him, he needs downloads. Like, he's Bobby Portis. He has to have the downloads in order for his show to make sense. If you're Elzie, the mayor of Podcast Town, nobody knows who I am. I don't need a ton of downloads in order for me to accomplish my goal. So again, you got to know which game you're playing. So if you're playing the volume game, then downloads matter. Then you need to get the volume. If you're not, then you're more focused on the relationship. You're more focused on what value can you add to your guest. Really being intentional about who you can connect them to, how you can help them get what they want. So it's really being strategically focused on how you add value and how you connect value down the line.
I can't stress enough the importance of doing a show to connect, as Justin said, connect with cool people, because I like, again, this wouldn't happen without my podcast. Brian is a good example. Most recently, Brian, you have a booking agency you use to do shows. So that day I had 3 shows booked, and one of them was Brian. And I'd never heard of Brian in my life, and he probably had never heard of me ever. And so Brian is on my list, my docket of things. My podcast manager sends me his bio the day before. So the day of, I read, I get prepared. I'm like, oh, this guy, it's called, his brand is the Dropout Multimillionaire. He's got a great story. He's written a couple of best-selling books. And I thought, okay, be interesting. I don't know who this dude is. We'll have an interesting conversation. Then his mic all screwed up. I thought this guy's a loser. but at the end of that show, I'm gonna tell you exactly what happened. At the end of that show, we talked a little bit about what each other does, and he's joined my mastermind. I'm going to be working with him, and he's starting a mastermind. And he flew his plane here today. Like, he flew from Atlanta to Nashville to be here at this event today. He's like, this is what happens through podcasting. This revenue to my bottom line, opportunity to meet him in his circles. He's flying down to go to a comedy show with Kevin Harrington and Brandon Adams tonight in where? Tampa. Like this guy, I met him on a podcast, and here he is. Like, this is how this works. Leon is a client of mine, and I just recently had him on the podcast. His story, he's a Mennonite, and he's a millionaire, and so we did a show called The Millionaire Mennonite. Now, he didn't want to call it that because he thought it was like bragging. I'm like, no, this is my show. That's why I'm calling it, because we're not. And it had a ton of views. I say a ton. Like, what's a ton? Like, not a lot of people watching it, but more than the average. And Justin here is one of my best friends. We met because of my podcast. He was one of the 3rd or 4th people on my show. And he saw somebody else on my show, find out he lives like down the street. Like, we live in the same city. And now he's one of the certified coaches in my program. Good friend of mine. We hung out last night. Like, this is the beauty of podcasting, that this is what it does. You can meet people that you'd never, ever meet before. And all my first shows, it's John, right? Yes, all right. So all my first shows, John, were in person. I think I did 40 or 50 shows in person, smoking cigars, drinking whiskey at the Standard. Casey's a member down the Standard. Did them down there. And that was awesome, because you're right. When 3D in a room, they ain't nothing like the energy. It's great, isn't it? Mm-hmm. And then it just got to be too much of a hassle. like carrying all this equipment, that big box that Justin's got over there with all our cameras and lights, and then parking got nuts down the standard. Like it was costing me $200-300 just to show up, like just for. And so I said, quick, I'm going to Zoom. So that's when I went to Zoom. But guys, you can meet some great people. Like you can leverage podcasting for your brand. You can help people. You can teach people. You can educate people. You can connect. There's no other medium today. Like it's not exactly as good as being an author. Like I just released my first book. You've got 2 out. I don't know if anybody else does. It's not exactly that level yet, but podcasting is getting there. Because now when I meet people and I say, hey, I've got a podcast. Oh, really? They want to talk.
Mm-hmm.
And I met somebody, I was telling you that story, who has a Cask Chasers podcast. He might be watching today. I don't know, but we met, and it's like one of the top bourbon whiskey podcasts ever. And I met him, and like we just talked, and he only wanted to talk to me because I had a podcast too. Mm-hmm. So it's just, yeah, you got to go look up Cask Chasers. It's really, I've subscribed, not listened yet, but I'm sure it's awesome because he's got lots of great guests on there. But what else do you think about this connection and how this stuff works? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, there are so many stories of people that I met through podcasting that now either has their own podcast or have started businesses because of their podcast. I've gotten speaking engagements. People have sent me. I probably have a whole bookshelf of books that I have from guests, and just really friendships and business opportunities that I would not have had outside of that podcast. I would say just be really, really intentional about the heart of what podcasting is about, and that's the relationship, the return on relationship, or the ROR. It is super, super important. I had a guest that we were talking. She told me that she was really, she's a traveler and she loves traveling. And I asked her, because most of those people, they have a way that they travel. I said, well, so how do you travel? She said, well, every trip that I have to have fluffy socks. I have to have them. Like it's my thing. So after our interview, I hop on Amazon and I sent her some fluffy socks. Well, now to this day, she remembers that. So just little things like that, just being really intentional about building those relationships, goes really, really far.
Probably my biggest success story from my podcast. I told you this at lunch, and you can do a little bit of this story. And I know some of the guys in the room know a little bit of this, but I invited Brad Lee to be on my podcast. So Brad's got Dropping Bombs podcast. It's one of the top entrepreneur business podcasts on Apple, and he flew to Nashville to be on my show. This is when I was doing it in person. So dude flies to Nashville. We'd only met once at an event ever. And it was really funny because when we finally met in person at my podcast, I was recalling how we first met, and he goes, "You should be more memorable." That's what he said to me because he couldn't remember me. But dude flew to Nashville to get on my show anyway, so it all worked out. But he got on my show, and it was the one day that I didn't wear my watch, and I'm watching my watch because I want to make sure that we end on time. And I got about 30 minutes into the show, and I went, "Oh crap!" And there was no clocks anywhere to be seen. And I thought, I don't know how to manage the time. And that ended up being a pretty long show because we just kept talking. But we were smoking cigars, we were drinking bourbon, we were having a great time. So at the end of the show, he goes, "Man, you need to come be on my show." Now, I knew he had a show, but I didn't really know it was that big of a deal. And I said, "Yeah." So I flew to Vegas and was on his show. And then that was in May of last year. I went out and got on his show. 51-second clip of me on his show went viral, 30 million views. 30 million views. I picked up thousands of followers on Instagram, and I made thousands of dollars in sales through coaching products, etc., because I was on that show. But more importantly, the concept that went viral was "Don't Say Divorce," which had nothing to do with business. It was about my marriage relationship with my wife. And I turned that into a TED Talk, which I just gave. I now have turned that into a website called Don't Say Divorce. I've now partnered with 4 marriage coaches, some of the top marriage coaches in the country. We're rolling out a program just for people to support, all because of a podcast. That's it. Like, this is the power of a podcast. Everybody should have a podcast. I know you agree.
I agree, especially business people. If you own a business, you should be in the podcast space in one of 3 ways. Either you're hosting a show, you're guesting on shows. I recommend both, or you're sponsoring ads on the show. Like, you should probably be doing all three, but at least the first two.
So let's do this. Why don't we've got about a total of 30 minutes left in our time together today. Why don't we kind of shift it back to the audience if you're okay with that, unless there's something specific you want to talk about. And let's go to online and live in person, and let's just go through questions. You could talk technical questions, connection questions, content questions, how to manage it questions, editing questions. Let's do that because I think this is where you're going to get your tactical stuff. Mark?
What is can y'all talk about kind of average time to prep to host a show and kind of your process with that?
So for me, I am.
Repeat the question. Sorry.
Oh, the question was average prep time. I am the most strategically random person you'll ever meet. And by that, I mean, I have to, I'm not the type of person that I can operate with a fine-tuned script, like every word is scripted out. It would just constrict me. But I love to have bullet points, and I love to have talking points so I know which key highlights to hit. I'm usually doing about an hour and a half to 2 hours of research on my guest beforehand, before I even accept it. So my process is you apply to be on the show. So you click the link and you put in your information. I get an email that's automated. I can approve. I call it wait list or wait list. So what I'm doing is I'm going to your website. I'm looking for things like, are we going to be a good fit? Can they articulate the value that they bring to the market? Are they an entrepreneur? Are they B2B? Those types of things. And then I'm looking at their social. Are they active? Are they commenting and engaging thoughtfully? Or is it just like one like and great post? Those types of things. About an hour or two. And then what I'm doing once I approve them is I'm looking at, okay, what might we title the episode? What notes can I send to the production team? That type of thing, so that flows smoothly. So total 3 to 4 hours, and then the hour that we spend doing the interview, so about 5 hours for me. And then, but that doesn't include the production time that my team, when they do all the editing and all that stuff. So about 4 to 5 hours.
For me, it's a lot less than that. So I am at the point now where people reach out to me to apply to be on the show. And it's usually brokers, booking agencies that are trying to get people on different shows. And I get probably 2 or 3 requests per day. And so right now, my first rule of thumb is if you have a podcast and are willing to swap, you go to the front of the line, because I want to get on a show, because you said those 3, we want to guest, we want to host, and we want to do ads. Mm-hmm. So mine right now, if you have a show and you're willing to swap, I'll do it. And you know what? I don't even ask their audience, because it doesn't matter. Because eventually I'm getting in front of their people. It doesn't matter. But the other thing is, if they don't have a show, I will do a quick search of their socials. And if they have a big following on Instagram or LinkedIn, or they have got a lot of YouTube subscribers, whether they have a show or not, I'll be like, yes, you can come on my show. Because why? I want to leverage other people's audiences. That's what I want to do. If you don't have a show and you don't have a following, it's a no. I just say no, or I delete it and I don't ever answer it. So
you don't even waitlist them, so they just never know.
I usually respond and say, no, thank you, not at this time. Check it back in 6 months.
Okay.
Yeah, but I don't keep.
I was going to say, tell them something.
Well, I usually don't. I usually don't ghost them. But occasionally I'm really busy. I just forget to go back. But that's my deal. So now, when someone's booked on my show, the prep that I do is my podcast manager does all of that. She reaches out to them. She gets the headshot. She gets the bio. She gets their links. She types up the show notes. I have a template for show notes on how it goes that says the name of the person, the date of the episode, the number of the episode, the date of the release, their bio, their links, their phone numbers, all that, so that when day of, usually it is day of, I print it and then I read it right before I go on. And I purposely don't do the research ahead of time, because I want to discover in the conversation who the people are. And I get that there are 2 different schools of thought on that. Some people want to know everything and ask all the leading questions. I'm the other guy. I'm the guy that says, I want to discover. So I'll tell you the truth. So I had a guy speak at my event actually, it's a friend of Justin's, spoke at my event in January. His kids were part of Covenant Christian School where the shooting happened in Nashville. Y'all know what I'm talking about? The Nashville school shooting. I didn't know that. And if Justin had ever told me it, like I didn't retain the information. So he's on Riverside where we haven't hit record yet. And we're just talking and he mentioned something about it. And I went, what? He goes, yeah, my kids go there. I said, do you mind talking about that? He goes, no, I'd be happy to. That was the show. Like I didn't know that until like 5 minutes before we recorded, and I named the episode "His Kids Survived the Nashville School Shooting," and it's had a lot of views. Again, a lot is relative, but that's it's like I don't do a ton of prep, but that's the way I do it. But I think probably more people do it the way Elzie does it than me. Brian,
So my question is going to be about marketing. So I've got about 30 shows out. I've been on probably another 30 or 40. If I just release an episode, it gets 100 to 125 downloads on Libsyn, etc. If I put it on YouTube and throw $50 at marketing, I'll get 5,000 downloads. And I got to question whether those are real downloads. Is that worth the $50? Am I throwing money away, or should I throw $100 at it? Meltzer's show got 10,000 downloads. I think I spent $60. I don't know if that's real or not.
So the question is, should you spend money on promoting episodes?
Yes. Is that, if you look at my total episode downloads, I'm averaging 5,000 on YouTube, right? 50 to 100 on Libsyn.
So my question to you would be, what actions are you driving, and are those actions happening more with the paid ads or with the ads that you're getting on downloads? What are people doing? Stuff like, are they signing up to your email list? Are they going to your website? Are they?
Understanding that I have no idea what I'm doing. And one of the mantras that I've always preached is success is a progression of thoughts, ideas, and execution.
Yes.
I started clueless.
Yes.
I'm still mostly clueless.
Got it.
So I never pitched anything, never tried to sell anything. I literally did nothing except throw podcasts out there. So I'm only beginning now to start marketing my new website, my new mastermind, my new coaching programs, my books. So no, I've had zero engagement outside of the downloads.
So what I would say for you is focus on your email list, building that up, because that get one. MailChimp has a free plan. There are other good ones out there. And the reason I say that is because that's how you're going to know the people who are going to be potential clients for you. That's how you're going to get your true 1,000 folks, right, that you need. Your email list is literally your currency. I would start there, because then if you can triangulate, right? So if you're putting it up on Libsyn and you're getting 125 downloads, and you send that episode recap out, and let's say 50 of those people click the link because MailChimp tells you, then you know you probably got about 50 people who are willing to actually click the link and listen. Yeah. Foundationally, though, I would say step one, start that email list, because that's going to give you a sense of how many people are acting, right? And then you can say, okay, when I do this, I get this many people that open my email. When I do this, I get this many people. And then you can start to take action based off that. That would be my number one thing that I would tell you.
Do you think those 5,000 downloads are real downloads, or is that downloads?
It could be. A download and a listen are not the same.
Right.
So just because, like, for example, if everybody in this room subscribes to your podcast, whenever it releases, you got that many downloads. Doesn't mean listen to it. It just means that we subscribe and it downloaded to their device. Yes. So that's what I'm saying, that email list is important, because again, if I send you an email saying, hey, new episodes out, Jason Duncan dropped gems on how to exit without exiting, and I get 100 opens and 50 people click the link, boom, that tells me so much information that I can use to build from.
it's good question, man. Anybody else? Questions? Brandon?
So I'm about 45 episodes in, and I think saying, like around 30 something, people are like, man, it's a lot of work, right? Like, I don't need to, like, my motive here is not to profit from my show, but I'm looking at some of these tasks, and I like started shopping for people to do this stuff. And the one guy I went and talked to, he was like, I'll do everything you're doing for $12,500 a month. And I was like, I'm really good at my job. I'm doing $12,000. But the point is, like, so obviously it's really expensive, but it would be nice. So, like, how do I maybe potentially start engaging, local businesses or whatever the case may be to say, hey, for advertising spots, like, what's the appropriate price point for a first-time advertiser or sponsor or things like that? How do you approach that subject? And what would be something where anybody in here would be like, I do that. Kind of, what do I take to them?
Yes. Email list.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why. Because if you approach me and say, hey, Elzie, I would love for you to sponsor my podcast. I have 150 people on my email list, and my open rate is 45%. Okay. That's sponsorable. Now, the number, I would say, you want to take your email list, you want to take your social. What I did was I went to, there's a website, and I could send it to you after, and I took the average click-through rate, the CPM of each of the sites, LinkedIn, Facebook, etc., and I averaged that out and made that my number. Does that make sense? So I said, okay, if my podcast has 1,000 followers on Facebook, 1,000 followers on Instagram, my email list is this, and my website gets this many hits a month, this is my price per quarter for the show. And that's how I would sort of approach it. I like bundle everything, all of your assets together, and then present that. Don't just say, well, I get this many downloads, because that number might be small, but you might have other assets that you can bundle into that.
And when you talk about the email list, so like my email list is around 225, 60+% open rate, which is great. I was really surprised with that.
That's amazing.
Yeah, super. But like is that just an incentive for you to put your investment dollars with me, or do I have to give you my email list, or do I have to like you're just saying, hey, there's leverage here.
Right.
There's proof that it works.
Exactly. Right. There's proof that people are taking action as a result of listening to the show. Because I care that people listen, but really what I want is people to take action. Now, what that action is, right? You can attach a different value to that, but you want action. Like if people are joining your Facebook group or whatever the action is, that's what you're selling. You're selling the transformation and not the download.
It's good questions. Have we got any from online? Yeah, let's go to some online questions.
One of them was about how to get more downloads, but more specifically, what is the best platform for publishing your episode? I don't even know if they mean like an aggregator or a specific platform itself.
What is the best platform for publishing your episode? That depends on what you're trying to achieve. If you are a video podcast and you're looking for views, LinkedIn is probably the best place to do that. If you're a business owner, LinkedIn is a really cool, good place. The hosting platform that I love is called Captivate. I like them because they're continuing to iterate and add features to their platform. Like literally today, I think they have a feature on there where you can accept tips. You can have subscribers and members. And so it's just giving you more tools to monetize. But there are other platforms out there that you can leverage as a host.
Yeah, I use so megaphone.fm.
Megaphone is a good one too.
Is the one that I use. I think Spotify just bought them this year. But there are lots of different platforms. And I don't know. I've only ever used Megaphone, but Megaphone's pretty easy to use.
Yeah.
So another question came through. We've been a dialogue show up until this point with my business partner and I. If we start doing interviews, I am concerned it would screw up the good thing we have going. Is that valid or not?
Concerned that if you change the format, will that screw
It was
things up?
Dialogue. With partner, and they're thinking about switching to interviewing outside folks, so that they're almost like a change in format.
Yep.
Is that valid or?
Yep. So if you're doing a dialogue show and you're looking to introduce guests to the podcast, well, that's the dynamic. I have to be intentional about maintaining that. One thing that I can think of off the top of my head is maybe you combine the two formats where you still do the dialogue and then you include the guest as a second segment, or do the interview first and then dialogue based on what the interview was. It's kind of combining them, but you still have the dynamic, but you're still adding the guest in there, and it actually makes it a really cool show too.
Good. All right, go one more.
So, where can we get accurate statistics from listeners, downloads in all platforms? Data aggregation.
Data aggregation. The best place is going to be your podcast host because they're going to aggregate from all the different places. But podcasting, unfairly, I think, is held to this unbelievable standard to be able to triangulate exactly who's listening for how long, where they are, what their birthdays are, and what their children like to do on Saturday. And I don't know of any medium that gives you that information. But your podcast host is going to be the best place to get that aggregate data in terms of downloads and listens. I know with Captivate, if you promote the player itself, that'll tell you how long people listen, what city, state they're from, and a more data set.
Yeah, I would say too that going back to what we've talked about, kind of the theme is that what is your goal? If downloads are your goal, then yeah, that's an important question to ask and get the answer to. Know how to do that. And there are certain tools that Podcast Town and other people like what Elzie does could help you maximize that. But I think for most of us as business people, we want something different than just a number. I want to connect. I want to meet Justin. I want to meet Brian. I want to meet these cool people and start doing business together. I can look at my podcast and I can point to several $100,000 in revenue profit because of me doing a podcast. That's it. I can point to that. Say, this actually happened. There's probably another couple hundred grand that I don't know how to point to, but it exists in the web of doing the podcast. So that's why I don't get all wrapped up in my downloads. You may say, well, that's because you don't have a lot. Okay, that's fine, but I'm making money at it. What are you? Like that's all. That's like I'm doing what I want to do with it. So, not saying that the downloads aren't important, but if that's not your thing, don't worry about it. Don't worry so much about the downloads.
So I hate ads. So like I pay for YouTube Red or whatever it is, so I don't see ads. So what is there something that you would recommend, or any of y'all you would recommend as far as like sponsorship, or only sponsor the guy that is on the show, or feedback on that?
So is your question alternative ways to monetize outside of ads?
Yeah, outside of inserting a sponsorship in the show or an ad in the show.
I love memberships. I love you can take tips. Patreon's a good platform. Like I said, Captivate just introduced a feature where you can have subscribers where they pay. It's like a tiered system where if they pay $3 a month for whatever you determine, they get these things. Maybe it's gated content or access, those types of things. The other thing that I really love is selling your own products and services. Um, Honestly, that's going to be your highest return on investment. Um, I'm probably in the millions at this point in terms of the podcast being the main lead generator in terms of how people find out who we are, what we do, why we do what we do. Um, that's been the highest result. Like I don't even take ads. The only ads, like if you listen to my pre-rolls now, it's me talking about what I'm doing. That's going to be your highest ROI. Those are the two main ones that I like. I like the subscription just because it deepens that relationship and it gives you a feedback loop to say what content do you want to see, what value can I add to you, and it's recurring. So and it just adds up. So if you have 1,000 people that are paying, $10 a month, that adds up pretty quickly.
One thing that's worked super well for us is affiliate marketing to like things that you normally use on a daily basis. You're like, oh, like I literally can't put this show together without this microphone. I'm just getting an affiliate link from this company because I'm using their stuff anyways. They're like, hey, you like the sound of my podcast? Well, here's 10% off. It's an affiliate link. you're just making consistent like revenue through that. That's how you YouTube channels and stuff like that for affiliate links and people just find stuff they just want to know like the light that you have, all that equipment, all that gear can be all affiliate links. It's like, hey, you might get gear that I use. Link below. Maybe here's a specific gear that you can buy. Like you can have the same exact light set up as me. Here's a link. You make a percentage of that. And if they're up 20%, it's an Amazon partnership link that we use in the past. That is their cookies for about 24 hours. So if you purchase anything else on Amazon over there, that goes to so I remember getting like a big really buy a TV and a couch. Like just put in a little like link for reconnect to a computer. I had that check come through and I was like, oh man, that's wild.
You should put that in your podcast. I sold a couch for my podcast. Yeah, I love that too because podcasting is such a authority type of medium that when you do it well and you tell people here's the mic I use, they go out and they purchase the mic. I think that if you look at the numbers of statistics, it's like 65%, which is unheard of in terms of advertising of people when they hear something mentioned on a podcast, they go out and they make purchases. So that's a really good point.
All right. Well, we are close to the end of our time together today. So, Elzie, I want to give you the last word. Any final words of advice on how to profit from podcasting?
My biggest words of advice would be just start, but spend some time with the strategy, the planning, the marketing, the sales, and the all the 6 pillars. But honestly, the bigger advice is just really understanding what game you're playing and playing that game well.
All right. Well, let's give it up for Elzie. Elzie does a great job today. So don't click off yet because we got a couple things I want to talk about. So first of all, Elzie, you've got this offer that you want to talk about for people to learn more about how to podcast.
Yes. So we have this absolutely free master class. It's called. You ready for this one?
Yep, it's right here.
The Mayor's Monetization Mastery Method. We call it 4M. And we go through all the 6 pillars in a little bit more detail. And we talk through some of the goals and the strategies on why you should have a podcast and the outcomes and the results. And I also want to just offer that completely free. So if you go to the website to that link, totally free. But I also want to offer, since you convinced me earlier, that we need to do it fast, but we need to do it right as well. 30-day fast start launch podcast for $99.97.
All right. So we talked about this at lunch. This is a brand new offer. So this
just made it up.
Just made it up. So you get a mic. Tell everybody what you get.
So you're going to get the basics. You'll get a mic, camera, and you'll get me to walk you through the whole process of getting started in 30 days.
All right. You get everything you need to get started to launch your podcast in 30 days. And how would they get access to that?
So just email me, mayor@podcasttown.net.
mayor@podcasttown.net. And it's $997.
Yep.
Yeah, and that gets you the mic, gets you all that you need to get set up tech-wise, plus you get time with him, a couple hours of him telling you exactly how to go through the 6 pillars. So you have a podcast going in 30 days. So reach out to him, mayor@podcasttown.net. I also want to talk about this is our next EMS is coming up on May 31st. It's not live in person, but it is live streamed online. We're going to be talking to this guy right here, Ira Bowman, about the 3 secrets to generate website traffic. This guy is an SEO expert, and SEO is how you get people to your site. So we're going to be doing this on May 31st, 3:30 to 5 o'clock p.m. Central Time on Zoom, YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. You have to register. Just go to therealjasonduncan.com/EMS. And by the way, once you go there, you're going to see all the different ones that we're having. Like our next live in person is going to be why Dave Ramsey is wrong about life insurance with this guy, Mark Willis. He's going to be coming in from Chicago. We're going to be doing it just like this, same format, August the 9th We're going to do that one in the morning. We're just testing out what time works better to get people here. So that's on August 9th. Now, here's the thing for everybody online and everybody here today. If you go to the website right now, EMS Live, and buy your ticket today before 5 p.m., you got 2 hours and 8 minutes. You get $10 off the ticket. They're $47 a piece normally, which is what you paid to be here today live. You get it for $37 if you buy this. So just go and use this code. So take your camera phone out, EMS Live 0523. EMS Live 0523. So if you plan on coming in August, go and get your ticket now, save $10, but you got to do that before 5 o'clock today. So just do that, take a picture of it, and that's what's coming up next. Thank you guys again for being here live and in person. It's really good to have this many people here live. Also, thank you guys for being on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, or Zoom, wherever you are. I would appreciate any feedback you've got about how this thing went. Just let me know if we can do this better. I want to do these better. I would love to see a room full of several hundred people, and we do this live all the time. But Elzie's been fantastic. Thank him for coming in from Milwaukee, flying in and doing this. This has been great. So that is the conclusion of EMS Live, our very first ever one. Thank you guys for being here. I'll see you next time. All right.